call me a god. You call me a god. You call me a god. You call me a god. Let's go.
All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? I know PC's in here, and some other people will come around here in a few minutes. Today is, I've got another author for you guys, because you know how I love bringing authors on the show, and we've given away books, I think 4 or 5 different times now. And hi, Ray, how you doing? Hey, Sumami. And I like to give away books, and today I've got David Fitzgerald, author of Playing God, which is a 3-part series, right?
Yep.
All right. How you doing today, David?
I am good. And can I just say that intro is the most badass intro I've seen in a long time.
Well, so you actually met my partner in crime here. Jess was working the RFR table at BajaCon.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and
give my love to Jess.
Yeah. She has helped put together some of that stuff for me and everything, and it's I love that too. I've got multiple different intros and stuff that I play, but that one's my favorite.
It's badass. I love it. Well, I got to start out first of all by saying we were talking about this just before the show started, but I love the fact you're doing this in Kentucky, because Kentucky needs atheists. Every atheist in Kentucky needs a show like this to know that they're not the only one out there. And I totally salute you. This is fantastic. Keep up the good work.
Well, and sorry if I lag a little bit here. I'm activating the chat bot thing, but so doing it from Kentucky, whenever I first made the channel, the deal was it was a play on words, like I am the only atheist in Kentucky. I'm the Kentucky atheist. And so I was playing with it. And real quick, Robin Webster, who's in our chat, Robin is an amazing supporter of the community and found me quickly over at like an RFR drive on the line, and joined my channel, and we now do a politics show once a week too, where we talk about being left-leaning folks in Kentucky from that perspective, which is also another kind of rare thing. So
that's a whole different conversation too. Yeah.
So we have met together, though. Like, we have expanded the number of atheists that take part in this. There'll be probably several that join chat today that are from Kentucky, and that community within the atheist community itself has been growing. And I meet these atheists who say they're isolated and they don't know other atheists, and they end up coming to the community and having a great time and making friends, and it really helps bring us together, which is an awesome thing, and one of my big goals.
Well, honestly, my heart is out to all you guys and gals, and I salute you. And honestly, this is the places where we need atheists, and I'm so knocked out by you. I know it's not easy. You know, it takes courage to even just say that. And when they ask you, hey, what church do you go to? And you say, well, actually,
and it's funny you say that, because like where I live in a deeply religious area. I would say the residents here are like 80% young earth creationists.
Wow.
I'm right down the road from Ken Ham's boat. He didn't put it here on accident, he knew what he was doing. AIG is a powerful, rich company who unfortunately is into all kinds of things. But so, like a lot of atheists in the community, I started out, I had questions and wasn't finding answers, or finding answers to the contrary. And then as I started to do my own research and stuff, I got more curious and discovered like Christopher Hitchens and a lot of those classic debates of the new atheism movement and stuff. And then as I went further, I discovered the Atheist Experience and Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Raw, and I've actually came across you a few times too over the years.
Yeah.
And I saw several interesting conversations with you about mythicism, because
Yeah.
that's been a hot button issue for the atheist community. Like, people getting
It
upset.
really is. And it's so funny that for some atheists, that's like, oh, they hate mythicism as much as they do, Christianity or anything. They lump it in with their red flag issues like Holocaust denial and the moon landing was fake, And
like that.
but the funny thing about that is that's what the reaction I got in 2010 when I wrote that book, Nailed, 10 Christian Myths That Show Jesus Never Existed at All. I got all kinds of pushback, just like that. 7 years later, when I wrote the follow-up book, Jesus, Mything, and Action, and I talk about, okay, it's not just that Christianity is fake, and these are 10 ways that the official story just fails, whether there's a real Jesus or not. It's like, here's where it looks like Christianity came from. These are the things in the Bible, in the gospel, outside the New Testament, inside the New Testament, that look like this is where Christianity came from. Then the reaction I wasn't getting was, oh, this is nonsense. It was, oh no, I never thought there was a Jesus. And it's like, come on, guys. But I mean, that's how much it's changed in just 7 years, and that was like 10 years ago already. So
Yeah. No, it's had its own journey through the atheist community. Before I go any further, though, let me show this so that people understand what I'm talking about here.
Fair enough.
You have written a number of books, and they're all available on Amazon. There's a link in the description to that'll take the guests to your page, and they can see all your books. Nailed is one of your more popular books, and it talks about the myths that show that Jesus never existed.
It's kind of an introduction to the subject too. Yeah, it's just sort of the top 10 ways that the official story fails, whether there was a Jesus or not.
Yeah, and I think if you're interested in that subject, that is probably a great starting point. But you also have the Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion, a 3-part book series that talks about different Western religion and that sort of thing, which I think is awesome too, and I love the title of that.
Thank you.
The Playing God, though, is your newest book series.
That's
and it's another three-part series.
It's another 3-parter, yeah.
And for people watching the show today, if you're interested in any of these books, I'm actually working on something to try and get you guys a deal to get some free books for everybody. But if you're interested in the books or whatever, you want to get one, you can't get it, or you need help getting it or whatever, after this video is over, shoot me a comment in the comment sections of this video, and I will get with you and I will make sure that you have a book of some sort. It may be a digital copy, but I will make sure that you have it if you want it.
Digital copies, audio copies, hard copies, whichever kind of book you want. That's what we're working on. Still waiting on the audio book for the new one, for Playing God. I need to record that either next month or month after. But it's in the pipeline. It's coming.
Yeah. So I was trying to, and I'm trying to work with their service to get them to let me give trial memberships out that come with a free book. And that's kind of the angle I was going to try and do it for everybody with. But I've also got other things that are in the works too. Another company that takes digital books and will read them to you in a preferred voice.
That's nice.
I'm trying to get with them too, so we'll see what happens. That those are utilities that I feel like are useful to the audience that comes and watches. I'm not trying to hawk food and stuff at my audience, but I will, if I can get a sponsorship deal with one of those, I'll do it. And I'm working with them, trying to get them to do it. We're kind of negotiating a couple things right now. So and I'm not asking them to give me anything. I'm just asking them to give me links to give stuff to the audience. But yeah, I think that the authors that we find in the community that write these things are, because for a lot of us that has so much to do with our journey to where we're at now. And
Yeah.
for me, it was the material and stuff I was able to get out there and find. And being in Kentucky, it wasn't easy to find that stuff. Like,
I bet. I
you
bet.
know,
Do your bookstores even carry that stuff? Libraries carry that stuff like that?
no,
Not at all.
no.
Yeah.
No, they there you might get into like one, if you get into one of the bigger ones in the area, you might be
Yeah.
able to find a couple things, but
Yeah.
not really, no. So even the university library, like one of the valuable things I had there was I had access to academic journals, and I
Nice.
could get any paper I wanted for free out of that.
You're not kidding
Well,
when you say do your own research. You're actually talking about get
yeah,
your hands on real research. Yay, I like that.
yeah, no, I was in the library sending requests for journals and stuff all the time, and to because I had taken some physics courses and stuff along with my computer science major, and so I had understood how the peer review process worked and all that, and so I was interested in things that were supported and that I could say this is a credible source for this information. So that's a long story of how I got there. But these books and stuff, they're so important, and that's why I give away so many books. And that's really the only giveaways we do here is books. We gave away a shirt once. The Matt Dillahunty Emboss shirt when he came on, I gave that away.
Nice.
Me and Robin I think we gave away, I don't remember. We gave away a couple of them, I think. I'm not sure. But
You used to be able to get a "I got nailed by Dave Fitzgerald" shirts. I don't know if they're still around anywhere. But.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. Well, I was talking and my cigarette went out. Another thing about Kentucky, we all smoke.
I was going to say, this would never fly on a California show. That cracks me up.
Yeah. Yeah. That nothing's ever been said to me about it. I don't know that it may become a problem that if the channel gets any bigger or whatever. I don't know.
I wonder.
Until
run with it. Run with it. Yeah.
I don't encourage anybody to smoke. It's just I have since I was like 10. So
you have a moonshine still behind you as well.
We do it in the house now. The technologies came a long way with that. But
hey, hang on a second, little girl, get down there. Hang on, I got a cat problem. Hang on.
Oh, yeah. Hey, what's up, Stacy and Ember and Chris? Good to see you. Jesus Tells, I've never met you, but good to see you.
Hey, y'all.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Mark Alsop, I gave away some of his books. Well, actually, I've given away some of his books, and he tells me I will get those in the mail tomorrow, and I'll ship them out to everybody that got one. But yeah, so we do that often. But so mythicism.
Yeah.
I've had mixed feelings about that subject because I watch people who get upset and like defend it to no end, and people who defend either position, not defend mythicism.
Sure.
And I'm kind of the opinion that it's very interesting and stuff, but as an atheist, it doesn't really matter to me.
And this is the thing. I mean, I would consider myself a big old mythicist, but do I think mythicism is important? No. Would it freak me out if it turned out that mythicism was all wrong? No, I'd just write another book about it. Honestly, I would run out and write a book about it. But here's the thing that does make it important. I mean, as atheists, it's no skin off my nose if there was a Jesus or not. But just from being curious about what we know about Jesus and what we can know about Jesus, that made me want to look into it. That got me on this path. And again, 25 years ago, it never even crossed my mind that there was no Jesus. Never. I would have thought that was ridiculous. And it wasn't until you start looking at the evidence we have for him, and all of a sudden all these red flags start popping up. So much so that like 2 years down the line, I'm thinking, okay, I don't think this guy existed at all. and I was far from the first or the best to point that out.
Yeah.
And so, and here's the thing, though: you don't have to be a mythicist to be an atheist. They're completely different animals, you know. But what, and it's not important. It's like I wouldn't try to convince my Christian relatives that there was no Jesus. There's so many other easier ways to go at it first. It's not a great conversation starter. I like having that conversation with atheists because you can have a conversation with atheists about whether, you know, what the reasons we have for thinking there was a Jesus or not. You can't do that with Christians because they can't even give an inch for that.
No.
But, but let me say one last thing, Joe. This
Yeah.
is what I do think is important about it, and what makes it a debate worth having among atheists is that everything we learn about Jesus in that back and forth between the people who insist there was a Jesus and the people who say, yeah, that's very problematic for this reason, this reason. Everything we learn in that back and forth helps us better call the bluff of these guys over here who said, oh, yeah, there was a Jesus and he knows, you know, I know how he wants you to think and behave and vote. That's why this is important, because it helps us know what we can and can't know about Jesus.
Right. No, and I think that if you're actually someone who's having conversations in this corner of the internet about it,
Yeah.
especially,
Yeah.
it's going to come up, and
Yeah.
it can only help expand, you know, the tools in your toolbox to have those discussions.
Sure.
So I do think it has a lot of importance in that way. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. You know, like as an atheist, it's like, well, you know, like a lot of people will say, well, there may have been this apocalyptic preacher named Jesus that went around, but he's in no way the character of the Bible. And
yeah, and I got that a lot right out the get-go. And I'm not saying that. I mean, you're right. But it's like, there's nothing implausible about the Jesus figure. Nothing plausible that there was one more failed apocalyptic prophet like that. That's totally fine. There's nothing stupid about thinking that. My only objection to that is that when we look into evidence, it doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like he was literary right out of the box.
Right. No, and I would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And I think that whenever you make that statement, you have to look at I'm not a historian, and I know that you don't claim the title of historian,
Right.
even though you have degrees in the field.
I do, and I follow. I really like to point that out. I'm glad you brought that up, because in the old days they would say, "Here's historian Dave Fitzgerald," and people would rain down hate on that. It's like, yeah, I have a degree in history, not a historian, but these are not my ideas. Don't kill the messenger. I'm following all the historians and the back and forth in this debate. So
absolutely. And whenever I have this conversation, especially with theists, I say, it's not that I'm trying to prove that Jesus didn't exist.
Right.
But from a historical standpoint, can you make the statement that he did or didn't? And I think that the problems that you run into with forgeries and with bad information over the years, especially from church fathers, that it appears that it's completely a literary creation.
Yeah.
And
I love
prophecy and
self-fulfilled. Yeah. I love what Robert Price has to say about it. He says, you know, for all intents and purposes, there is no Jesus, even if there was one originally, because everything that we think we know about him comes from these books who have nothing to do with anybody who actually lived in the first century. And
right.
Yeah, I could not say that better.
And that's really a big problem that we see with the Bible in general, is like,
right. Oh,
Old Testament
and New Testament, sure.
Yeah, it does mention actual historical places that existed, and there are accounts of real people that take place in there. But when it gets
not
to
as many
major
real
events,
people as you think there are. That's the other thing.
Right. Yeah. It's
a
the
perfect
representation.
That's a perfect segue into talking about the book I just came out with, because here's one of the interesting side effects of saying that there was no Jesus. Over the years, at conferences, I'd have Buddhists come up to me and say, yeah, we're having the same discussion in our circles about whether the Buddha existed or not. I had ex-Muslims come up to me and say, yeah, you know what? We're having the same discussion in our circles about whether Muhammad existed or not. And so that's been rattling around my brain for the last couple of years. And so when I set out to write, there's been some really interesting discoveries in the historicity of, or I should say, in the origins and the development of Judaism and of Islam. And so when I was working on a book on sex and violence in the Bible, about 2 years ago, I stopped and realized, you know what? There's so many these just jaw-dropping facts that have come out. I have to write this book now. And so playing God makes the argument that it's not just Jesus that has a problem with a dodgy backstory. If you take all the top 10 religions, Eastern religions, Western religions, doesn't matter, all of our top 10, and you look at the founder figures for those religions, you start seeing the same patterns over and over again, to the point where it looks like it's normal for major world religions to start out with a purely imaginary, made-up, politically expedient founder figure.
Absolutely.
And that's what I argue in the new book.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great position to do it from.
Yeah.
I try to be as gentle as I can with some of these apologists, because they start from all different places, and not that I feel especially sorry for them, but in order to have the conversation.
I mean, we've all been Christians before, right? I think all of us were Christians originally, right? So I've been there. It's just not a discussion I appreciate having with Christians, because it just is such a non-starter.
Right. Well, no, a lot of times.
Yeah.
A lot of times when it starts out with, well, the Bible is the Gospels are eyewitness accounts of this, I'm like, okay, well, we're probably not going to get anywhere here, because there's a lot you're missing there, and it's fine that people believe that, but for a person who is skeptical of that account and is saying, well, is that historically supported? No, not really. And
exactly.
So then you get into
the question.
Right. And so I will accept when Christians say, like, the best source is Paul's letters. I'll give them that. I'll say, sure, that's the best source, but it still has its problems.
Exactly. Half of his letters are forgeries right off the bat. Yes. And even biblical scholars, religious biblical scholars, accept that. Yeah.
And one of the things with scholars that I learned, I had to dig through to figure out over the years, is that you have scholars, and then you have like exegetes and people who will their job is kind of on the line of them accepting the resurrection from the get-go. And that's problematic whenever you're referring to those as a scholarly source. So you'll get both atheists and theists alike, who, when they're having these conversations, they'll defer to some scholarly work, and some of those sources are better than others, of course, And of course, the theists all hate Bart Ehrman, and they don't want to hear you refer to. And I think Bart has been. I think that he's had great takes on some things and not so great on other things, which is fine.
Same. And I say that as a huge fan of his. I think single-handedly, he's probably done more to show the light on problems in biblical history that just aren't there in other fields of history than anybody else.
Misquoting Jesus is one of the greatest things. Yeah, I mean, it's a great book. Bart, but see, the thing with Bart is you can't deny that he has been open to changing his mind and to advancing his position on those things.
That's very true. In fact, when he wrote "Did Jesus Exist?", we didn't hate it because we thought he was going to agree with us. We hated it because we thought it was going to be the best defense of of historicism, and he just phoned it in. While he was writing great books like Forgery and Counter-Forgery in Christianity, fantastic book, but he clearly just banged this out on a weekend. Trying to just get rid of this silly mythicism nonsense. But his book that came after that, you could see that he had backed away from things that he accepted as established fact He's starting. Oh yeah, that's not quite as established as it was.
Yeah, yeah.
He did a
You see him approaching it more as a historian, and
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
and
that's a good
10
thing,
years from now, 5 years from now, who knows? He may even go further than that. But
Yeah.
I will say the last thing I read of his was a debate he did um, called "Can We Trust the New Testament on the Historical Jesus?" And I swear, that debate. First of all, he creamed him. He creamed the guy he was having debate, and he creamed the guy who edited the book around. So he's kind of debating two people at once. But it sounded like I was making that debate because he was saying the exact same things I would say about there, and we were completely on the same page for like the first 100 pages of that book.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Yeah.
So I got a $5 super chat here from Jesus Tells. Looking for a first century man behind Jesus of Nazareth is like looking for a 21st century man behind Peter Parker because of the Tobey Maguire series. Yeah. No, I think that's a great metaphor. And Mark Alsop, who is a friend of the channel and author, just purchased the new book. I had no idea this was the David Fitzgerald of Nell, and it has been a go-to in my library since it was published. Mark,
that's fantastic, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Mark wrote a book called Journey to Reason that's really good, and has another book coming out soon. So
that rings a bell, actually.
I think I've got a screenshot of it here.
No, I don't have that book, but the name Mark Alsop rings a bell.
Yeah, and Mark's from Kentucky.
Nice.
So that's again, another Kentuckian that we try to help each other out with those things.
Love it.
But a number of people have, and during the stream on the Apostate Sisters, we came across each other the other day, and Ember was on, which I did an interview on Ember's channel last night. Ember had got the book Nell, and I asked Ember, I said, have you had a chance to really read that yet? Because I've got it, but I haven't had a chance to do anything because I've read Mark's new book in order to write a little blurb for it for Amazon. And so I hadn't got a chance, and I asked.
So many books, so little time. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've tried to, because let's face it, Kentucky isn't known for spitting out the most educated people, and this accent doesn't do me any favors. So I've tried to read and take in as much material as I can to be able to have informed conversations about these things, because I think that as an atheist creator who's going and talking to people, I could do good things and build the community, and I could also do damage in some ways. So I try to prop those things up with as many sources and even things that are controversial to my view or whatever. I try to take in those things. Man, I've read some boring books about morality. But
I'll bet. Well, I want to say something real fast, Joe, before you go too much on this line. The fact that you are who you are, and you have the accent you have, and you are where you are, that's going to open doors to you in Kentucky that you wouldn't have otherwise. Somebody like me couldn't go in; they would just shut their eyes to this, city boy, Yankee, California boy, don't sell yourself short that way.
I've had a number of people who's approached me since I started doing this that said, hey, you've inspired me to start a channel. You've inspired me to use my voice as someone or have people that really support me just because I am from Kentucky. And
just being able, giving somebody the strength to just, regardless of anything, if you can just hold your head up high, and when someone says, well, what church do you go to? And you say, well, actually, I'm an atheist. That is huge. That is unprecedented. That is this. You're the first generations of a new world, really, in a lot of ways.
I try to. I realize that in these conversations, there's not a lot of new things to bring to it, right? But there are a lot of new people to bring the old things to, and.
There was a quote from one of the presidents, I forget who, but it says, "There's nothing new under the sun except for the history you never learned." And I think
great quote. No, I agree, and I like to. I've met so many people though from Kentucky or other areas, rural areas, Bible Belt areas. I know that even like Godless Engineer, who is a big
Man.
supporter of mythicism, is in
Yeah.
the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of atheists from the Bible Belt, but very few from Kentucky, and it's been awesome meeting all those people. I think I've probably met a good dozen or so, and then
That's
I've worked with the RFR people in Kentucky. I know you've
Love
done some
those
things on
Love those guys.
RFRX and all that.
Well, I'll tell you, Joe, if there's any atheist groups out there that would want to have me speak, I would be there in a heartbeat. I would love to come out to Kentucky and
Well,
talk to the peoples. Yeah.
we'll talk about that because I'm working on a few things myself. So
Rock on. Rock on.
the Tri-State Free Thought that organizes the Ark Encounter protest has put it off until the 10th year anniversary. So for this year and next year, they won't be doing one.
Gotcha.
And
what are the tri-states in the tri-state group there?
well, I think that tri-state is Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky.
Gotcha.
I'm in a tri-state. I'm Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia, though.
Gotcha. All right.
They usually organize that, and since they weren't going to, I had talked to the president of Tri-State Free Thought, and they were like, "Well, if you want to do it, we'll give you all of our resources to do it with. We'll provide everything we use to do it. If you want to organize it and do it, we'll even give you a place for everybody to come hang out afterwards."
Oh, this is huge. Yeah.
So I may be. I was waiting until December got here to actually start putting that together for July. And I may, provided that everything's going to go forward in that way, I'll be trying to get some speakers and stuff to come to it. But we'll see how that goes. But
Nice.
Just something off in the distance that I'm trying to do. I've tried to take part in as many things as I can and help in whatever way I can. But RFR has been great and
fantastic. They're fantastic people. Yeah.
And they're linked in my description of every video for anybody that's wondering about that. But yeah, so back to the other thing though, that we get so many I'll play devil's advocate for a moment.
Okay.
The apologetics argument that I get a lot, which I despise, but I'll tell you anyway, is, well, how much historical support is there for a character like Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great? And
short answer, so much better than Jesus. Or any number of religious figures for that matter, but especially Jesus when we're going to go down that road. And it's not just the amount of historical evidence, but it's there's multiple kinds of evidence. There's physical evidence, there's textual evidence, there's the raw fact that this couldn't have happened unless this happened. Where with somebody like Jesus, you just needed people believing it. He didn't have to really be resurrected to explain Christianity. So there's all kinds of types of evidence, and then there's quality of evidence as well. And in both of those measures, Jesus does not fare well at all.
No, and I agree with that. My first response is always, well, clearly you haven't checked that yourself. And then I say, also, Julius Caesar isn't saying if I don't believe he existed that I burn in hell for an eternity. So who gives a shit? And this is supposed to be such an important character to Christianity and the formation of what became the Catholic Church. That why did they not hold these documents on a higher pedestal than they did? I mean, you claim that the Greek writings are from these older manuscripts, and we have bits and pieces of them here and there. Why do these things not exist at all?
And it's like, oh, you have 20,000 medieval manuscripts? That's great. That's awesome. How many first century manuscripts do you have? How many second century manuscripts do you have? That's the real question to ask.
And that's important because whenever they talk about these, church fathers throughout history supported this. It's like, yeah, but when? Because
and what did they actually say about it? Because sometimes they'll say something that sounds really strange if this was talking about a real Jesus. Yeah. And I talk about that a lot in Jesus Mything in Action, is this strange thing here in the New Testament or in the gospel doesn't make a lot of sense if we're talking about a real Jesus.
Right. right. And those, I mean, I don't. I'm speaking to the choir here in with
Sure.
you and in the
Sure.
chat. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of us are on the same page with that kind of thing anyway.
Yeah.
But it's
But here's one thing, just to kind of dovetail on what you were saying earlier, is again, it's not just Jesus, and there's good reasons, for instance, that we know there was no Jesus, but we know there was a Paul, for instance, or at least half Paul, because half of what we know about Paul is also really bullshit, legendary, or outright forgery. And you could say that about even figures that aren't religious that we think existed, like Pythagoras or Aesop or Homer. It turns out these guys are not as real, or there's more than one guy behind it.
right.
And that's a whole really interesting thing too that comes out in the new book, Playing God.
One of my favorite contexts to look at it is in the contemporary literary context of the time, because of how they wrote things, and because it's important, because around that time there's other places that are writing similar books about similar characters, and Empty Tomb has a meaning, and
right.
there's so many angles you could look at this from that.
Exactly.
And that leads you to, can I say with any certainty that this person did or did not exist? And I mean, I think that you can't, of course, you can't support something not existing really,
Right.
but when you have so much information that makes it so sketchy, it's like, well,
And it just starts feeling you're barking up the wrong tree, insisting there had to have been a real guy. And that's for me, it's like, yeah, maybe I can't prove there was no Jesus, but there's a lot of questions you have to answer me before I would be comfortable saying, I guess there was a guy named Jesus. When to me it seems like, well, he's what we know about him comes from this allegorical writing that comes generations after the fact, and everything else about him seems like it's just a Jewish version of these Greek pagan mystery faiths. It seems like this is just the Jewish version of that, And that's just one theory. I mean, there's other theories other people have about it, but that's what I find the most compelling, and that evolution of this story, and how Christianity before that Gospel of Mark was written sounds from the way Christians talk about Jesus after that Gospel of Mark was written.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. That's a huge thing for me. That was one of the
Yeah.
first red flags that came up.
Yeah. So whenever it's, depending on, because I don't really like to have these, I mean, I will sit down and debate a topic or have the conversation, but I would prefer to talk to somebody about why you think something is true, or why you think I should hold that position. And
Absolutely. Debates are overrated in my book. I used to go to them all the time, and I was proud of my track record of them. But I don't think you change any minds the way you do by just having a dialogue. This is why I think this. And I'll have that with any atheist. And if we go away at the end of it, what I love doing is saying, for me, this part of evidence will go into that. And if he says, well, for me, that convinces me of this, and that convinces me of that, just knowing where we disagree is fine. We don't all have to be mythicists. We don't have to agree. I like to say, because historicists aren't the enemy, Christians aren't the enemy, bullshit is the enemy. And
right. And it's upsetting that in some places in our community, you go and bring up like something Richard Carrier said or something, and people lose their shit.
Thank you. The Bart Ehrman Richard Carrier thing, it's like, dudes, my dudes,
And I get the both positions, and I'm like, but is this really the thing we're fighting about? I mean, you can disagree on those things, and it's really inconsequential. I mean, because
exactly.
What all of this shows is that there's no historical support really one way or the other,
and it's the dudes who just treat this as if, oh, this is beneath contempt. These are pariah. That's crazy bullshit nonsense. I would rather talk to somebody who disagrees with me, and we just walk away, shaking hands, saying, "Well, that's what I'm convinced by. That's what I'm convinced by. That's fine." But this whole thing about, oh, it's ridiculous to think that is just such bullshit. It's like treating this like it's beneath contempt. there's a great essay. It's a critique. It's a book review of Ehrman's "Did Jesus Exist?" by Philip
Yeah.
Davies, who was a fellow historicist of his. But he says, you know what? Surely in any other field of history, this would not be a controversy to weigh the flimsy historical evidence. And he's a guy's like, oh yeah, I think there was a Jesus. Sure, I don't think that's going to change in 20 years, but to treat this the way Ehrman does is ridiculous. And again, it's the same way people were talking about Moses 30 years ago. And it's like, now that is completely flipped. The Jesus thing is just a little further down the line, and it's a lot more controversial. But but it's not going away. That's the other thing. It's like everyone acts like, oh, this was all hushed up, this taken care of in the Victorian era. That's ridiculous. And it's like, I love, again, what Robert Price said. No, these weren't rebutted. They were harumphed. They were just like, blah, 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 blah. What ridiculous. Blah, that's silly. It's very silly stuff. And Ehrman does the exact same things, exact same tone. And again, I love the man. He's done some great work. But man, he's got a major blinders on when it comes to that.
Yeah, and a lot of that attitude about it still carries on both sides of this conversation today, because it's like, even when talking with atheists, they're like, "You're not one of those mythicists, are you?" And I'm like, well, I don't think it's supported, but I don't really have a name for that. Like,
I think that attitude is going to change, because again, it's not going away. They're not rebutting these arguments. These arguments are standing.
Well,
and again, yeah, everything we find out in the back and forth makes us realize, you know what? Whether there was a Jesus or not, it's not such a open and shut case. And
right. And the thing of it is the atheist community is pretty, at least on YouTube, is pretty unanimous with, like, the Bible is the claim. And, when we look at the claims that the Bible makes, many of them are either not supported by any evidence, or have extremely low quality evidence, or much evidence to the contrary. And but then whenever we get to the topic of Jesus, everybody splits, and it's like, it's like, okay, well, let's look at this, and can you say with any certainty that this character existed? What does historical evidence support and things? And it's, again, it's fine if you believe that. But let's call it a belief.
Exactly. But it's interesting to me, and it's one of the things that made me write this book, Playing God, is that you see the exact same reaction to historians about Zoroaster, to Islamic historians about Muhammad. It's like you see them make the exact same excuse, and they all have the exact same shitty set of circumstances. And it's like all their biographies, whether you're talking about Buddha or Rabashanata or Mahavira or any major religion you want to talk about, biographies start growing as generations go by. But the deeper you go down to, the less you see. And that, as much as anything else, makes me think that all these religions are starting from the same thing. They are being made up, usually for political purposes. Usually it's the ones that are propped up by an authority, like a large multicultural empire situation, where you're actively trying to bind a disparate group of people together as your subjects. And so it's very useful to have a transcendent God or a transcendent belief structure that encompasses a wide range of different people. And so we see this whole period that some historians used to like to call the Axial Age, that first millennia BCE, between around 600 BCE to around 200, where you have all these multicultural empires. You see this happening. And this just seems to be a natural part of the evolution of religions that we see from prehistory. And as groups get bigger and more inclusive, you see the religion changing to keep up with that.
Well, I also think, and something that I don't hear a lot about, but I think is important, is why did it affect the Jews? And at the time, the Jews were occupied by Rome, and they were looking for hope. there's also this narrative of the Jesus character being to come back and help them take back what's theirs, and
Yeah.
is supposed to be the Messiah in that way,
Right.
to fight this big final
A
battle.
military, exactly. And Judaism was so diverse in the first century. There were other groups who were saying other things about what the Messiah was going to look like and what he was going to do. So it's very interesting that ours seemed to show up later after the Jewish war, in response to the Jewish war. And
Right.
yeah.
And,
You know,
and
when you're just talking about the Jews, you go back 100 years or so to the Maccabees, to that revolution against the Greeks at that time, that led to the Hasmonean kingdom, where Herod the Great, his people came from, his dynasty came from. That's where Judaism seems to have started, not 1600 years before in the with Moses or Abraham, but like in the 2nd or 3rd century BCE, like much, much younger than we expect. And that was one of the mind-blowing things that made me want to write this book now, is what people like Russell Gemerkin and Jonathan Adler, the Tel Aviv archaeologists, are coming up with, saying, yeah, we don't have any physical evidence for Judaism and the practices we know of for like until the 3rd or 2nd century BCE. Russell Gemerkin saying, yeah, these first 5 books of Moses, looks like there's no evidence for them before the years 273 or 272. That's how much he can pinpoint it. And saying, yeah, and it looks like they're dependent on these books that were written about 10 years before that by this guy over here in Egypt, this priest over here in Babylon. This is the kind of thing that blow my mind. It's just really exciting for me to see that we can really get our handles on how young these religions are that are major religions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of some of that. I will look into a lot of that.
And you can say the same thing for Islam. Islam is like, for the first 80 years, 60 years, you would not recognize it at all, what we think of as Islam. And the takeaway for me in this book, what I want people to realize is that, yeah, the Arab conquests were totally real, totally historically legit, but they weren't caused by Islam. Islam was caused by those Arab conquests. And again, that's just two of the religions I go into in those books. So it's incredibly exciting stuff.
I mean, don't all of these Abrahamic religions rely on Judaism being true?
Right.
So
Islam relies on Christianity. Christianity relies on Judaism. Judaism relies on Zoroastrianism from Persia, which a lot of people have never even heard of. But we wouldn't have Judaism if it weren't for the Persians.
Yeah,
and they even go back further than that to Mesopotamia. But directly, those religions have a huge. It's the granddaddy of all that Abrahamic side. And another interesting thing that also blew my mind is that those same guys, the Zoroastrians in Persia and Central Eurasia, they also led to early Brahmanism, to early Buddhism. So even our Eastern religions that are the major ones today stem from that wishbone of those two, East and West, from this Zoroastrian religion. And it's not the oldest religion either, but it's just the oldest common ancestor of all our major religions today. I like to call it the mitochondrial Eve of our religions.
Cosmic Kyle says, David, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I will. Hi, everybody in the chat. Beamsy, I see you joined. BS Lewis is here. Zach, Stephanie. Hey, everybody. We've got quite the crowd watching tonight. We're streaming on YouTube, Twitch, and X right now. So wherever you're watching from, hey, and thanks for coming and watching. There's Jess now. Hey, Jess. Jess helps me out tremendously doing things around here. And she says she's sorry for accidentally stalking you at Baja.
You say that like it was a bad thing, Jess.
Yeah. I've got a fly that keeps trying to fly into my eyeballs.
Sorry, but he's so pixelated you can't even tell. So make it till you make it, man.
yeah, right. Heard that a few times. But
it's utterly invisible at this resolution. Yeah.
whenever, I mean, of course, we as an atheist, we're going to say, well, like, we don't believe that, and there's this information that Moses is probably a conglomeration of several people. Some existed, some didn't,
And here's the thing: read my book, because he's not a conglomeration of a bunch. It's like the Moses story. The story of the Moses story is fascinating, and
okay,
in like the 5th century BCE, the 7th century, there was no Moses story. It's like it started with this one story this Greek guy wrote, and then this other Egyptian priest did his own version, and our Moses is directly in response to those two versions. It's like purely literary. There's no such thing. It has no basis in reality whatsoever. It's clearly from this book and this book. And,
awesome.
And we know that now. We've always known about those books, but until Russell Gmerkin came along, we always thought, oh, that's them responding to our Moses. And it's like, yeah, no, our Moses is responding to those books. It's mind-blowing stuff. Mind-blowing stuff.
So for everybody that's joined us since we got started here, we're talking about David Fitzgerald's books, Playing God, and that's a three-part book.
Yeah.
The Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion is a 3-part series.
Well, actually, let me just correct you real fast. The Complete Heretic's Guide is the name of the series. So basically, all these books except Nailed belong to that series.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Nailed is the Nailed 10 Christian Myths that show Jesus never existed at all. It is a very popular book that a lot of people have read and covered, and
it's a nice, easy intro to the whole subject of just pointing out some of the problems with thinking there was a real Jesus, whether there was a real Jesus or not. Here's the problems. This much is not true, whether there was or not.
Sure, and I think it's important to phrase it that way. And I've included the link to David's author page on Amazon, so you can see everything that he's written, actually. And if you're wanting to get your hands on those books, you need me to help you get one or something, let me know in the comments after this video, and we will get a book in your hands one way or another for anybody that's interested in reading this stuff. I think it's important that we have, even if you believe these things are true, I think it's important that you have information that challenges that idea. Even if you're an atheist that says Jesus didn't exist and you want to assert that a God doesn't exist, I think it's important for those people to understand the claims to the contrary, even if they're not supported very well. We've got another $5 super chat from Jesus Tells. Why are Genesis, Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Moses' name based on the Greek spellings, but when it comes to Jesus, they use Joshua?
Well, I mean, that's kind of let's flip the question. There are Greek names because we use the Greek names. Our English Bibles use the Greek names. Jesus is the Greek version of Yeshua, Joshua. So that's where that's coming from. It's not, I don't know, it's not really a gotcha question or a smoking gun question. It's just the convention of how our translations got used. Same thing with why are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and not Matthai and Jacob, and it's just, that's just the way Western Christianity decided to go with that direction. And
let me, TJ, I did email you back, by the way. And even if they're not supported really well, the shade from the Kentucky, I am speaking as an atheist here, so I'm not beyond poison in the well when we're just having a conversation. But,
we can discuss that. We can discuss that all night. Yeah, but he's not wrong. No lies detected. He's not wrong.
No. So I appreciate you trying to keep me honest, but it's kind of what I do. But
do you have a Christian following on the show? I mean, is TJ a Christian?
TJ is a Christian that just approached me last night when I was on Amber's channel and has emailed me wanting to have a discussion.
Well, that's
So
fantastic. I'm so glad to see you here, TJ. And yeah, feel free to throw in more questions. But keep in mind that, again, this tends to be a non-starter for Christians because just to unpack everything about it, I mean, that's what you have to do to have a discussion, a dialogue, to have a debate. It's a whole different thing. But that said,
yeah.
I'm happy to talk about, anything. I'm sure Joe is too.
Yeah, no, I like to sit down and have those conversations. I'm not so, I think that the debate thing is valuable to, it has its value and its place and things. I
Sure.
don't think, so
I think there's a limited returns. It seems
Yeah.
like all the real heavy lifting comes in the Q&A after the debates, it seems like. And it seems like you really don't change a lot of minds, but I think it plants a seed. I think at best,
yeah,
I mean, sometimes I do see that, and it's very gratifying for me when I see somebody change their mind. But most of it is just making people think about things in a new way.
well, when we sit down and just have conversations, even if they're moderated,
There you go.
we can talk about what people actually believe, and then we don't have a subject that we're trying to stick to for the debate. We can say, oh yeah, and this reminds me of this other thing, and let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And you can have, I feel like it's better to be able to sit and have a conversation and let it go where it goes, rather than be worried about a debate topic and the performative aspect for YouTube.
And this is the thing. And trying to score points and, trying to act like you have all the answers, whether you do or don't, and that both sides are guilty of that for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm super glad to see somebody like TJ here, because it's like Christians who put their money where their mouth is. Those are the ones I want to have discussions with. And when I lived in the Bay Area, I would be asked to speak to a lot of Christian groups, and I love to speak to Christian groups who are, like I said, they think they're right, and they're willing to, talk to somebody who doesn't think they're right. And I have so much respect for that. It's really huge.
Yeah.
And here's another thing I like to tell Christians. It's like, if your Christianity makes you a better person, a less judgmental person, makes your life happier, I'm all for it. If you ask me if I think it's true, that's a whole different thing. But I think most Christians and most believers of any kind are believers for good, real, rational reasons that have nothing to do with Christianity being rational, good, or real. And you can expand that to all the other ones as well.
TJ responded to you and said, I also put my cross to walk, and I don't live like a hypocrite.
Rock on.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Fair enough.
The fact you're here, the fact you're here says a lot to me. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk to you anytime you want to talk. Yeah.
Yeah. The I think that there's people that want to have conversations, and those are great. And there's people who want to have arguments, and those aren't
That's not
so
great.
beneficial. Always. I mean, they do have their place. I'm not dismissing it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on debates.
Yeah. But in a way I am, because I'm kind of tired of them. I'm kind of over them. I mean, I'll talk to anybody, atheist or Christian, who wants to have these discussions, because I love having the discussions, and I think it's important to have these discussions.
Yeah.
But when it's a debate, there's just a built-in limited returns that it's like, if you're not really interested in anything except scoring points, we're really not talking to each other. We're just talking past each other.
Well, I think there are, like, I found my way to a lot of this from old debates. That's where I started at.
Yeah.
But I think there's also now a section of the atheist community that is more interested in, like, okay, we've seen those things. We've seen how to challenge those ideas and stuff. Now let's talk among ourselves about these things and make community with like-minded people and things. And I think that there's something to that, and building that and working in that area, to me, holds more importance at this point in my journey through these things.
Yeah.
So
community is super important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I love shows like this.
Yeah.
I think you're doing a huge service. Yeah.
It's just how I relate to the community. It's not, I don't care to do debates if that's how we got to get, if that's how we got to get it done. And there's a topic we got to talk about, then that's what we'll do.
Sure.
But it's not on my priorities really.
Again, there's atheist debates that I'm more happy having with Christians, for instance, but like just unpacking why you are a Jesus mythicist takes all the time
Yeah.
you have for everything. It's like, why don't you read my book first, and then we can just debate whether it's true. If what your problems are with that. I'd be open to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but just
Well,
it's. I prefer to debate that between atheists because they don't have a dog in the hunt. They can at least accept it on an intellectual level in a way that Christians, and not, I don't want to sound like I'm just bashing on Christians, because same with Jews, same with Muslims, same with all of them. If you go after their religion, there's instantly this, you're attacking my identity, you're attacking my whole, worldview, and that's tough. It's much. For that kind of thing, I'd rather just be Socratic and talk about, well, what about evolution? What about science? What about, where did your scriptures come from? That kind of thing. I think there's better ways to go than jump right to, hey, your guy didn't exist at all.
Right. Yeah, no, that and that's really the thing. When you start with that, it's like you don't ever get to have the conversation. And
it's a non-starter. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And TJ, I answered your email, and if you get back with me on that, we'll set up a time and we can talk. I'm cool with that. I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to do that. I like to say that I like to have honest conversations with anybody that's interested in doing it.
There you go.
With the key word being honest there.
I can even put up with dishonest conversations if once they realize that they're doing it, because and I'll even do that in debates because the audience can tell they're being dishonest. That says more than most of your arguments are going to make, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, Jason Freer. Jason, great to see you.
Yeah, Jason says the books are amazing. I've had a hard time putting them down. I think that's an excellent review.
Thank you, sir. Give my love to Melanie.
As we start to wind this down, if anybody in the chat or anything has any questions, anything you want me to address with David, at me in the chat, and I'll be sure to ask those questions for you. We're probably going to just try and head towards wrapping this up. I think we've had a really productive conversation and talked about a lot of interesting things. And again, if you're interested in those books, let me know and I can help you. I love to get books in the hands of people who want to take in that information and read it. So that's why I ask that you comment after the video and let me know.
And if you have questions that you don't get a chance to say, send them to Joe afterwards, shoot him an email. And if you would pass them on to me, Joe, I'm happy to answer people's questions. I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook, not super hard to find. And you guys can always shoot me an email at everybodylovesdave@gmail.com.
Hey, Aaron, good to see you. Just got here. Yeah, we're on the downside, but go back and watch, Aaron. But
everybody's here today too. This is really awesome.
Yeah, no, this is a bigger crowd than I usually have, but again, we're streaming in multiple places again today.
That's
so
awesome.
Caught the attention of more people, I imagine.
I love that. That's really awesome.
Again, the different books and these first two are Playing God is the name of the series, and there's 3 volumes to it. The first one, An Evolutionary History of World Religion, Volume 1, The Evolution of God, the Gods of Monotheism, The Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion, which is this. That starts with the Mormons. What are the other 2 subtitles on this series?
It's funny because this all started back when I wrote the Mormons, and I was just planning to do a series on all these religions, like Jehovah's Witnesses and all of these things. But what happened was I sort of got sidetracked by writing the follow-up book to Nailed. So I wrote Jesus, Mything in Action, which got so big it wound up being 3 books. So next thing I know, I've got 4 books in this series, and 3 of them are really 1 book. Then I wrote this book, and it's another 3-book thing. So I've got 7 books in this series, and they're all really 3 books, and 2 of them have to do with the Jesus history, and none of them particularly have to do with Western religion. In theory, I've got another book on sex and violence in the Bible that's based on my YouTube talk that I want to do, but that's going to have to come next year sometime or even later. Just got too many things on my plate right now to
Yeah.
I'm super excited about this one. Honestly, I can't tell you guys how excited I am about this particular book because it's not just a Jesus mythicism book; it's a world mythicism book, and I think the arguments it makes is going to make Jesus mythicism make a lot more sense for some people who it's really obvious when you see it in Islam. It's really obvious when you see it in Buddhism, but when you put them all together, they all start to look alike. They're super different. They have different scriptures, different gods, different everything else. But when you look at their evolution and their origins and their development, they all start looking in the big picture just like each other.
Maya Atkinson is our resident goddess, and she says that this has been a great interview. So
Thank you, Maya.
There's my approval for the day.
Well, there you go. You got goddess approval. That's not nothing.
All right. I think that, like, for me personally, and my opinion, I'm just a dude from Kentucky. I'm no authority to turn to on this, but
same. It's like I'm looking in a mirror. Yep.
My opinion would be that, like, if you're in the atheist community and you're interested in trying to have conversations about these things with theists, whether they be family or on the internet or whatever, I think Nailed is a really great starting point, personally. But I haven't gotten too far into it. But I know that these books that have, like, okay, here's 10 Christian myths that show Jesus never existed. It's good to know that. Your newer books, though, I'm not really familiar with what the content is of those.
They're just a lot deeper dives, a lot more footnotes, a lot more citations. One of the complaints I got from Nailed is like, oh, well, there's no citations, there's no footnotes. It's like, oh, you want footnotes, you want citations? Okay, boom. So Jesus Mything in Action is really deep dive and really extensively sourced. And so
Mything in Action. I should have grabbed a screen cap of that one. But I mean, there's different books for people.
Right.
Wherever you're at in this conversation, there's different books there, and that's why I wanted to kind of display it as an author for whatever you're interested in. Let me know.
Sure.
And
and for all you Christians out there, you're gonna love my Mormon book. You may hate all the other books, but I guarantee, beloved, you will love my books on the Mormons. And the series I did with Bryce Blankenagel on Myth Vision podcast, The Secret History of Mormonism. Oh, it's gold. You'll love it.
Yeah, and some of the Mormon claims are, we talk about how absurd they are, but really, it's like Christian ones are that way too. Really, I mean, like they're.
That's the thing. Yeah. You can't really get too high and mighty about how ridiculous this religion is over here.
Yeah.
I call it in the book. I call it steampunk Scientology, though. I do call it that.
Oh yeah, I like that. So a lot of you'll get a lot of Christians in these, especially apologetics, will say that Mormons aren't Christians and Catholics aren't Christians, and whenever they start doing that, I'm like, are you sure that's where you want to go? Because then your group is starting to look more a little culty. It's just a little small hole in the wall thing, right?
Well, even just like, and it took God 2,000 years to get it right, It's like, and then Protestants came along, It's like, funny. He takes his time, given the Word of God, the real deal. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, and at this point, I've heard so many claims about different things that it's like, I'm willing to listen to whatever someone has to say about it. I mean, where we go after that kind of depends on what you're pushing, but I'm willing to listen to it anyhow. David, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and I appreciate the kind words that you sent me on Facebook. I am trying to help people who are looking for community, and
you are, and keep up the good work, because Kentucky needs it.
Well,
all of America needs it, but you are in the belly of the beast, my friend. So absolutely.
I appreciate that, and it's because of people that write this material and do the work and put it out there for us that we're able to have these more informed discussions and things about it. So we appreciate you just as much for doing that. And I know those things are a lot of work, and I hope that we can help support you a little bit in the atheist community for doing it.
I super appreciate it. Because honestly, you guys are the reasons I do this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not for that big atheist money. I guarantee that.
Yeah, you're not part of big atheism, are you?
Big atheism, all that money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that
Well,
always cracks me up when I hear them. Yeah. You don't know me at all, do you? Yeah. Yeah. Well, honestly, I do have time for more Q&A if you have time for more Q&A. But
sure. Anybody that wants to engage, let's. We've got a lot of, and thank you everybody that's saying it's been a great show and stuff. I won't loan you $5, John, but I'll send you a book if you read it. Thank you everybody for all the kind words in the chat and stuff. If anybody has anything else they'd like to bring up, it's hard to watch chat when you're doing a show. Yeah, I'm awful about that too. Anyway,
I've got about 20 minutes left, so that's plenty of time for Q&A if you guys are up for it. Or if not, we can call it short. And again, you can email me or find me on Facebook or give a question to Joe, and he'll pass it on.
Well, I'm going back to make sure I haven't missed anything.
Okay.
Mark, I agree with you. It's funny how evangelical Christians point to Mormonism as something that's too weird to believe.
I know I did. Yeah.
And TJ, have a good night, everyone. God bless you all. Even atheists, we appreciate having you here, TJ.
Absolutely.
You're not discouraged from coming and hanging out and talking with us. There's a few theists that hang out in the chat and stuff.
I'm always glad to see that. Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? That's my favorite Bible verse for when it comes to people here.
Let's see. Oh, here we go. Here's one. What does David think about the possibility of Christianity springing out of Paul's psychosis? Paul's letters seem to be 98% of what all Christendom leans on.
Interesting question. I'll start with the short answer. No, I don't think it sprang out of his psychosis, only because Christianity is much older than Paul. But it's super interesting that when we think of Christianity, we're leaning 98% on Paul. It's like in the whole first century, how many Christians do we hear about? Maybe a dozen, if even that. How many books do we have? 27, whatever, however you want to split it up between the real ones and the forgeries, about 24 or so. How much of that is Paul's or attributed to Paul's? The majority, the overwhelming majority of it. That's weird that of all these guys, he's the one that we fixate on. And before Paul, we know there's a Christianity, and it sounds very different. Even Paul's Christianity sounds very different from Mark's. The book of Hebrews seems to be what Paul and all those ones he complains about, his contemporaries and those fake Christians who are preaching another Jesus, a fake Jesus, are preaching. It seems to be what the book of Hebrews is saying. This Jesus who was a spiritual figure who did everything in heaven and never appeared on earth. That's a very simple way to put it, but that's essentially where I'm going with that. There's a lot more to break down about that. But yeah, it's very, very interesting that for some reason, and that's probably because the 2nd century heretic Marcion liked Paul's letters so much. It's very possible that in his own life, Paul was not famous at all. And if it weren't for somebody like Marcion making him a big cornerstone of his New Testament, his version, we wouldn't have Paul at all. He would have just been consigned to oblivion like all the other first century Christians. It's a very interesting thing. Aaron's got a question here.
Yeah, he's kind of adding to the previous question. Psychosis also totally doesn't include quite as many control mechanisms. It tends to be more erratic.
Right. Another thing, like Paul's vision on the road to Damascus, a lot of people think, oh, that's clearly epilepsy, or that's clearly, a hallucination. But one thing to keep in mind is, yeah, that's not a bad diagnosis for what's being described there. But we have to remember, Paul never tells us that story. Luke gives us, whoever Luke really was, gives us three, contradictory versions of that story. Paul, who loves talking about how awesome Paul is, never tells us anything remotely like that. So that's another thing we have to be careful about when we're talking about what we know and don't know about figures like Paul.
Yeah. And great question. I mean, things concerning Paul are a big part of this conversation, of course. And so thanks, Stevie and Outcast for posing the question there. Let's see. She responded with something here. Well, I use psychosis as a shorter way of saying psychotic episode, because okay.
No,
yeah.
I get you.
Yeah.
But in a sense, I don't think Christianity began because somebody hallucinated it all, or had a psychotic episode. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not
wrong, but it just seems barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
It seems purely literary. It seems to evolve out of this other older religious movement, the mystery faiths, that came out of Hellenism and even earlier than that. But it just seems to be the Jewish form of that trend, that trend that was going on hundreds of years before Christianity started.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. The let's see. Hey, Let's Farm, good to see you. Anybody else got anything they want me to bring up before we get out of here? Here's your chance. I mean, you can ask me afterwards, and I'll make sure David gets any of your questions. Yeah. If you want to ask something else, leave it in the comments. I'll go through my little ramble of all the things I end the show with, and if anybody posts any more comments asking questions, we'll ask them before we get out of here.
For sure. And thanks again to everybody who came in tonight. It's really awesome to see such a great turnout.
Yeah, no, I'm completely blown away because usually on a Monday evening I get about 20, 25 people watching, and we've had in the 30s and 40s the whole time, which is great. Awesome. So thanks everybody that tuned in tonight. So I want to say thanks to everybody that supports the channel. Channel memberships have been a thing for a while. They start at 99 cents, and we've gotten quite a few people that have signed up for them. So thank you so much for your support of what we do here. It helps me improve things and continue to do better and better and stuff. And I truly appreciate that. I didn't mean to make that disappear. Keep going, because there's a lot of people there. Also, if you're new to the channel tonight and stuff, I don't ask that you buy a membership or anything. I make members content every week for people, but that's not necessary. If you like what I did, just like and subscribe. That would be awesome. That would help out more than anything if you're new here tonight. On top of the channel memberships, though, people have joined my Patreon. Greg, Robin, Quinn, Ray, Regios, Captain Desk, Narrative Dude, thank you so much. I've put exclusive content over there for those guys, stuff behind the scenes and unedited things, and then exclusive stuff. And there's a whole bunch of exclusive content coming to Patreon having to do with me trying to put together my story in order to write some sort of book. So I'm working on those things. Just hang with me. It'll be up soon. I promise. I'm going to start with the first video probably next week, but working on it. Awesome. Let's see.
Again, Joe is not in this for that big atheist money either. I guarantee it.
No. Yeah. What's awesome is, and as far as money goes, like the channel, when the idea of it doing well as far as that kind of thing, like I had to buy equipment because the tripod broke, and it's good to be able to do those things. And I always try to find ways to make things better. And I'm able to offer things like books and stuff to people because people do support the channel. I wouldn't be able to afford to do that otherwise. That's why I do those kind of things, is to try and give something back to people who want it. So again, if you want to get your hands on a book, you're not able to do it or whatever, I mean, for any reason, let me know in the comments afterwards, and we'll talk, and I'll get it to you one way or another, whether it's through email or if I have to ship you something, I can. Whatever. I'll get you a book in your hands or get the information to you. Let me know. Always willing to help. And I guess that looks like it's about it. So again, if anybody wants to ask any questions after the fact for David, send them to me, and I'll make sure they get to him. And thanks everybody that watched on Twitch or X or on YouTube tonight, wherever you're at. I truly appreciate you being here, and have a great one, everyone. See you later.